Last week, we watched Mansa Musa conquer 24 cities. We watched him bring the great Songhai Empire to its knees. We watched him build the largest empire in West African history. But all of that, the gold, the mosques, the universities, the conquests, was known only to those who lived within his world. The Arab historians who recorded his pilgrimage, the Egyptian merchants who still talked about him 12 years later, the scholars of Timbuktu who studied under his patronage. Europe knew nothing. To the mapmakers of medieval Europe, Africa south of the Sahara was a mystery, a blank space on their maps, a place of legend and rumor, a continent that might as well have been the edge of the world. And then, everything changed. It started with stories. Stories carried by Arab merchants who crossed the Mediterranean and traded in the ports of Spain and Italy and France. Stories of a king so wealthy that he had crashed the economy of Egypt simply by being generous. Stories of a pilgrimage so vast, so golden, so utterly unlike anything the world had ever seen, that the people of Cairo were still talking about it 40 years later. Stories of a city, Timbuktu, where books were the most valuable commodity on earth, where 25,000 students studied in a single university, where the libraries held more manuscripts than any institution in Europe. European merchants and scholars listened to these stories with disbelief. Could such a place exist? Could such a king be real? Was Africa, the continent they had dismissed as a land of mystery, actually the most advanced civilization on Earth? The answer was yes. And in 1375, a Catalan cartographer named Abraham Cresques sat down to draw the most detailed and accurate map of the known world ever produced, the Catalan Atlas. 6 large panels of detailed illustrated maps covering the world from the Atlantic Ocean to China. And there, in the heart of West Africa, Abraham Cresques drew a king, a magnificent king, seated on a golden throne, holding a golden sceptre in one hand and a large gold nugget in the other, his crown gleaming, his robes rich and colorful. And beside this illustration, Abraham Cresques wrote, "This Negro lord is called Mansa Musa, Lord of the Negroes of Guinea. So abundant is the gold which is found in his country that he is the richest and most noble king in all the land." Bang. Read that again. The richest and most noble king in all the land? Not in Africa. In all the land, the entire known world. This was the first time a sub-Saharan African king had ever been depicted on a European map. The first time a European cartographer had looked at Africa and drawn not a blank space, but a face. A specific face, a specific name, a specific story. And the name was Mansa Musa. Think about what this means. In 1375, 40 years after Mansa Musa's death, his reputation was so powerful, so far-reaching, so utterly impossible to ignore, that the most important mapmakers in Europe could not draw the world without including him. He had not sent ambassadors to Europe. He had not traded directly with European merchants. He had never set foot on European soil. And yet, the greatest European map of the 14th century was incomplete without him. That is the power of what Mansa Musa built. An empire so great, a reputation so vast, a pilgrimage so extraordinary, that the ripples of it reached all the way to the drawing rooms of Catalan cartographers 40 years after his death. And here is the final irony that history rarely mentions. While European cartographers were drawing Mansa Musa on their maps, writing that he was the richest and most noble king in all the land, the scholars of Timbuktu were busy adding to a library of 800,000 manuscripts. Europe was discovering Africa. Africa had never needed to discover Europe because Africa, and specifically the Mali Empire of Mansa Musa, had been at the center of the world all along. Next week, we enter the final chapter of Mansa Musa's story, the final years of the greatest ruler Africa has ever produced, a man who wanted nothing more at the end of his life than to return to Mecca and pray. Subscribe to the African Codex, because the final chapters of this extraordinary story deserve to be told